So can you share a personal experience that motivated you to pursue a career in diversity, equity, inclusion, and leadership?
So growing up in Burlington City, which is a 1 square mile town in South Jersey, we were raised in the part of the town called the country.
Okay.
So, I mean, even though I like to think I'm a New Yorker at heart in my brain, I was raised in this really small community. So my whole family went there. My mom's youngest siblings are only about 10 years older than me. So we all went to the same school system through all the years. And at this time, I go into high school and I go into my guidance counselor's office to try to prepare for college. And she looked me dead in the face and she said, "June, you are not college material. You are a minority and you need to learn to type and you should join a minority program, but you qualify for government cheese."
What are some fundamental principles you believe every organization should adopt for successful diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives?
So I think there's a couple of things. I think the first thing is that people need to get real with who they are. They need to know history or we have no history.
Yes.
If you saw that.
I love that. Yes, I do.
So if you don't know where you came from, good, bad, and ugly, that our lives are the great American novel.
Yes.
There are villains, there are heroines, there's love, there's sadness, there's everything in there, but you need to know where you came from.
Right.
When you get right with that, you can take on anything, but be humble. Yes. I would say humility is probably the strongest part to all this, because as we move forward, there are times where you might think that you're a little further ahead and you start to get a little big in the britches, as my grandmother would say.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you go, "Oh yeah, you know what? I got to check myself as well."
Mm-hmm.
So I try to always remember where I came from, how I got here, all the steps that it took me to get here.
Yes.
And then reach behind me to pick up the next person and take them with me.
What advice would you give to someone interested in pursuing a career in DEIB leadership?
Know yourself. Know where you came from. Understand that. Understand where that falls in history. Yeah. Understand how laws and how situations have gotten us to where we are today.
Right.
And what can you do to bring value to make it a better place than where you found it?
Yes. Welcome to Talk the Wellness Tea with Dr. Chalice. I am so very excited to have our guest live in studio, Dr. June Cernak. Welcome, Dr. June.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting.
Oh my God. Oh, Dr. June, you are such an amazing, inspiring, intelligent woman.
Oh, well, thank you for all that. And back at you. It's been such a pleasure to collaborate with you on all the things that we've been doing. I mean, really, it's so humbling. It really is.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. June. So listen, Dr. June is a powerhouse diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging officer, consultant. Dr. June is going to tell us all about herself. I can't even describe it all here, but we're going to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. So, Dr. June, tell us, how has your multiracial background shaped your approach to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the workplace?
Well, growing up in a household where my dad's family is Native American and my mom's family is African American and Italian American, I thought everybody's family looked like mine.
Oh, wow.
So I had no idea that other people didn't have people that looked like my people in their lives.
Wow.
So it wasn't until, you start to go to school and you start to be around other people, because I was just raised with my cousins.
Yes.
That people start to make remarks.
Yeah.
And then now we know them as microaggressions. But then we didn't know. My grandmother said, "Well, that's a backhanded compliment. You don't need to take that, hon."
Oh, go, Grandma.
And I was like, "Oh, well, okay. Well, now I know what we need to do."
Yes.
And I think that was the first recollection that I had, that our family was a little bit different.
Okay.
And then I would come home and ask my grandmother. And my grandmother was the true boss.
Yeah.
She was barely 5 feet tall. My mom's mother, she was just all of that. And she just made sure that we all felt included and loved and respected, and didn't let anybody take anything away from us.
Wow.
So I think that was where I first learned how to just stand up for myself, because I watched her do it, and she had 12 children.
Wow. I love that, Dr. June. I love that you had role models to teach you how to be assertive, how to stand up for yourself. Mm-hmm. Because imagine the people struggling who don't have the role modeling, and if their natural personality characteristics are not assertive, you can see how they would be struggling in this area.
Even on my worst days, both my grandmothers born in 1911, in very different circumstances. I think about what they accomplished without all the technology and all the privilege that I have today.
Yes.
And if they could get through all that, I can pull my big girl pants on and keep it moving.
Oh, I love it. I love it, love it. So can you share a personal experience that motivated you to pursue a career in diversity, equity, inclusion, and leadership?
So growing up in Burlington City, which is a 1 square mile town in South Jersey, we were raised in a part of the town called the country.
Okay.
So, I mean, even though I like to think I'm a New Yorker at heart in my brain, I was raised in this really small community. So my whole family went there. My mom's youngest siblings are only about 10 years older than me. So we all went to the same school system through all the years. And at this time, I go into high school and I go into my guidance counselor's office to try to prepare for college. And she looked me dead in the face and she said, "June, you are not college material. You are a minority and you need to learn to type and you should join a minority program, but you qualify for government cheese."
Oh my goodness.
And I could just remember that feeling, thinking, am I poor and stupid? Like, what just happened in this conversation? Because I was watching a lot of my friends think about where they were going to go to school and what they were going to study. And I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't know this. At those times, I think that you didn't really share those stories because there was a little bit of embarrassment in that. And I had no idea that my aunts and uncles went through the same thing just a little bit before me, until we all sat down and started to really reflect on those things.
Yeah.
And I realized my aunt, who is now a CIO at Lockheed Martin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, there's that. Went through the same types of things.
Yeah.
So I think I've spent my entire life pursuing education and fighting for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging because I felt like at that particular moment that I was cast aside. And I didn't want to be invisible.
Oh, I love that. Wow. Just think about all of the people out there that feel invisible and they feel like they're cast aside. And you took that and turned that into purpose.
I did. And it's really funny how it manifests itself in every situation.
Wow.
Because it's always in the back of your head. Who would think something that you were told when you were 16 sticks in your mind to be so, bring that same focus back into your work to this day?
Yes. Wow, that's purpose for sure.
It is. It is.
What are some fundamental principles you believe every organization should adopt for successful diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives?
So I think there's a couple of things. I think the first thing is that people need to get real with who they are. They need to know history or we have no history.
Yes.
If you saw that.
I love that. Yes, I do.
So if you don't know where you came from, good, bad, and ugly, that our lives are the great American novel.
Yes.
There are villains, there are heroines, there's love, there's sadness, there's everything in there, but you need to know where you came from.
Right.
When you get right with that, you can take on anything, but be humble. I would say humility is probably the strongest part to all of this, because as we move forward, there are times where you might think that you're a little further ahead and you start to get a little big in the britches, as my grandmother would say.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you go, oh yeah, you know what, I got to check myself as well. So I try to always remember where I came from, how I got here, all the steps that it took me to get here.
Yes.
And then reach behind me to pick up the next person and take them with me.
Oh, I love that.
So that humility has been something I think that I try to at least check myself pretty frequently on.
Yes.
And even when I was getting my doctorate, my dissertation chair said, you can't do this work until you get straight with yourself. And I cried during my 4th chapter because as I was writing it and I learned some pretty rough things about our family.
Yeah.
My grandparents told us the unicorns and glitter version of life. And so when I really realized some of the harder tales, nobody talked about those kind of things.
Right.
I didn't know interracial marriage wasn't legal. How would I know that?
Yes.
Yeah. Then when you realize what your grandparents went through, you're like, oh, well, look at that.
Right. And then it helps you to do better because you're right. You're like, now, if my ancestors could get through this, I know I surely can get through this thing I'm going through today with greater resources.
100%.
Oh, I love that.
And those are the things that I try to, I've worked in corporate America, I've worked in higher ed, I've worked in nonprofit, loved all those different facets of it, but I still try to remain humble during that process.
Yes, I love it. So humility is key.
It is.
I love that. So how do you prioritize or measure success in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work, particularly in diverse and complex workplace settings?
So I really like to look at people individually. I like to find out what motivates them, because after you speak to someone, not everybody's motivated in the same way. Some people like recognition, some people like the financial aspect of it. But I think in order to be equitable, you need to know what resonates with them. I like to also keep it fair for people to have the best lives that they can. So that sense of balance along with the sense of purpose. I don't like to see anybody forego time with their families or time with their friends for the workday.
Yes.
I think that a lot of organizations will have your replacement before your obituary is done.
Yes, ma'am.
So I would prefer to look at DEI work as making sure that everybody feels like the work that they're doing has value and it's integrated into the overall structure. A lot of companies spend time on a strategic plan, but they forget about their people.
Yes.
So I keep telling everyone that artificial intelligence is great, but you don't have empathy and compassion in artificial intelligence. You need your people to come into this. So if we can look at it from those perspectives, I really think that's going to be a key to look at each person individually and what do they need to feel whole.
Yes.
And what's going to be the next step for them. Because some people are content in the roles that they're in, but some people have aspirations of doing other things.
Exactly.
But you wouldn't know that unless you can actually talk to them and listen to them.
I love that. So you have a people-oriented orientation.
I do. I think that that's the only way that we're successful. I tend to take jobs and only want to work with people that I really like. If I'm spending time away from my family, then I better like the people that I'm around.
Oh, yes.
And I don't love everyone that I've had to work with, but I think that for the most part, I've built teams of people that are cohesive together.
Yeah.
Because it makes it that much nicer for us to have conversations.
Yeah.
Really.
Oh, I love that. I love this leadership style. What are some common misconceptions about DEI efforts that you encounter in your work?
I think, unfortunately, people have thought that DEI is a dirty word, and it's not. And DEI doesn't mean what you think it means. So I think that there are people that make it into a comment that should hurt you or make you feel uncomfortable, when in fact it's your superpower.
Yes.
So I think that when we look at things like this and we ask people about being diverse, it should be diversity of thought as well as bringing your cultural diversity into it. I really love to marry cultural intelligence and emotional intelligence.
Yes.
I think that's where we get the best of ourselves within our work that we're doing.
Yes.
People think that a DEI person is to check off a box on this big, map. A lot of times people ask me to do presentations, and somewhere in their organization they've had an issue. And I won't do the presentation if they tell me it's just a one-time deal, because I don't want to be performative.
Yes.
If you're going to use it and integrate it into your actual workplace, then let's do that. Then I'll be more than happy to come out and say, during the course of the year, we'll do this 3 or 4 times.
Right.
But if you're doing it once, I'm not your girl.
Yes.
I also ask people and invite them to take a look at their policies and procedures. I don't know how many times I've talked to organizations and they have not seen their employee handbook in a decade.
Wow.
So how do you expect your employees to know how to act, or that you have the right mix of employees, when you haven't checked your policies?
Yeah.
So I really invite people to take a look at some of those things. Things have changed.
They really have.
And our organizations have not changed with it. So you can't just give somebody 3 days for bereavement for immediate family. Exactly. We're not there anymore.
Yes. And we never were, actually, because grief and loss is a whole process in and of itself.
It is.
That's individualized to every person.
And you add religious beliefs, you add spirituality to it, and you're just off from the start. So I don't want to work for an organization that doesn't see me like that. Yeah. So you need that to have that value. So I think that's where the DEI work comes into place. It shouldn't be something that you just, check off and move on. It should be, what can that bring for perspective? People are leaving money on the table if they are not representative in their products and their services to all the diverse communities. Yeah. Trillions of dollars are left on the table when people aren't actually focused on the right people that they're servicing.
Yeah, you are so right, because diverse workforces generate revenue.
Sure.
They actually make the workforce, the company, the organization more rich, more effective, and that's proven through research.
We've seen that time and time again. We've seen banks tell us that when they set up like minority lending programs, how their debt ratios are so different, that they are so much higher for them to be able to have successful outcomes. Yeah. And what do we see on television? Just the opposite.
Exactly.
So we have to be careful what news sources are invading our thought process, but there are so many groups of people that are focused on the right thing, and productivity goes through the roof when you have a diverse thought process behind it.
Yes.
So
I love how intentional you are. You know, intentional in your work. Like, all opportunities are not your opportunities.
Correct.
They may be opportunities, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's your opportunity. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're called to that. And I love how, because you know your purpose first, then when opportunities present themselves, then you know what to say yes to, what to say no to, maybe not right now. I love that, how intentional you are.
I do that with my nonprofit work. I do it with volunteer work. And there's sometimes, it's time for you to leave the party.
Yeah.
And you need to know when it's your time. And I think that all these groups need a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah.
I think if you looked at my resume as a whole, you think, oh my goodness, this person just doesn't know what they want to be when they grow up. But it's really the fact that you get to a point where, and somebody told me this a long time ago, she was a head of a military base, and she said, June, sometimes you will plant the seeds, some days you'll water flowers, the next day you might pick the crops, but you don't need to be the person that does all of that.
Yes.
That garden can grow, but you might have a little piece of it, but you don't need to stay through the whole cycle and the whole season. So I've learned that that your life and even your relationships with people can be in seasons.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Oh, I love that, because this reminds me of Ecclesiastes chapter 3 that talks about to everything there's a season and a purpose.
Sure.
There really is. So that's a great example. I love that.
It is.
So how do you address resistance or pushback when introducing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging programs, especially from individuals who may feel excluded or defensive?
So it's not lost on me that I can walk into a room and talk about diversity and get a different reaction than somebody else that might look a little bit different from me.
Yeah.
So there's a privilege in being able to say things. I can tell you that having an education background has probably been a great equalizer for me, because even though I do have some people that want to play who's smarter than a fifth grader and challenge things,
Right.
When you look at it from historic content and education, it really can't be disputed. If I say that we've been here before, that we've seen these things happen before in time, and then these are the results of those things, and I use actual historic knowledge behind it.
Yes.
When you bring people and you invite them to think just a little bit differently. I also like the adult learning model.
Yeah.
I think that we as adults have to stop thinking like children.
Yeah.
And so that might require us to come and take a step back and say, what we learned from our parents and grandparents serve them, but they don't serve us.
Yes.
And there's no need to be mad. It's just a different time.
Mm-hmm.
So I invite people to kind of unlearn some things. It's also the art of accountability and the apology.
Yes.
Because in diversity, you can say, oh, I wasn't aware of that, and now that I am, I apologize. Not a out of your mind apology, but an actual sincere apology that you're going to do better.
Yeah.
Sometimes people get stuck and they dig their heels in even further because they don't want to be wrong. It doesn't matter if you're wrong. At the end of the day, that's kind of really not the point. But if you learn something new, I think that that's the biggest part of doing DEI work. That's when you get your resistance, is to try to show someone that there's another way to look at this and a way that you can embrace it and still be authentic and still be whole. I actually have had social workers and caseworkers refuse to give service to clients in the community that look different from them or love different from them,
Right.
and base it on religious beliefs.
Yes.
We all have our spirituality.
Yes, we do.
But the spirituality should also allow you to embrace others
Exactly.
and not, stay away from that. So we invite people to learn a few new things. I think that every time I present, I talk about a few things, especially I love some of the Native American history piece of it. I think that's just absolutely fascinating. I learn something new every day.
Yeah.
But we talk a lot about, everybody's taught Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Oh, yeah.
And then we come back and we say, well, Maslow took that from the Blackfeet Indians and inverted it, where we started from self-actualization, not the other way around.
Oh, I love that.
And so when we start to have this conversation, people are like, wow, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I said, yes, because that's one thing that wasn't in a textbook when we were children.
And you just taught me something too, Dr. June, and I love it because I did not even know that either.
And when you think about what a pyramid looks like, and it's shaped like a teepee, and there's progressiveness to it, and this matriarchal way that the tribal communities came about, we believed in ourselves first because of that spirituality, and everything else we do is for the good of the clan. So it's interesting to see that someone inverted that, and we've just been regurgitating it ever since. So that's also like part of higher education, that we have to take a look at what it is that we're saying, and again, be intentional about our education system, but sharing those types of things to just let people know you can think a little bit differently and learn something new every day.
Wow. So I'm having a moment right now because in a podcast, I was on the Humanitarian podcast last month. And I talked about this when I talked about my trajectory and journey and deciding on if I wanted to major in psychology or sociology. And I had decided on psychology because I believe that it starts within us first and then it radiates outward. So what you're saying is really resonating with me because that's my belief. And now I'm looking at it from a different lens of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but the inverted version of what Native American tribe?
Well, he was with the Blackfeet Indian tribe.
The Blackfeet Indian tribe. Oh, I'm going to go and do some more research on that.
Yeah, the Smithsonian has such a wealth of knowledge about so many things in Native American culture. They have a program called Native Knowledge 360, so for K through 12 and higher ed, that you can actually learn the curriculum about it. I presented on Friday for my institution about rethinking the thanks and Thanksgiving.
Right.
And kind of go back to the history of where that really came from.
Right.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So you can't dispute DEI when you're talking about historic content and laws.
Yes.
We're not that far away from the laws that have really caused us as a society to have issues within our lifetime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you guys see how happy I am and excited to have Dr. June here to share all of this knowledge with us? Oh my God, I love it, Dr. June. So how does your multiracial identity inform your understanding of intersectionality in DEIB work?
So I might be one of the few people that hate the term imposter syndrome.
Okay.
I hate it. I think that intersectionality and multifaceted is what we need to think of each other as. We're not imposters. We're just learning something new.
Yeah.
So why do we have to say we're imposters to anything? I think that that's got such a negative connotation, and it's so limiting, especially for women.
Yes.
That why can't you do a little bit of everything?
Right.
And why can't you love it and change it and do something new? Like I said, I change jobs every 4 to 5 years because I learned something new, and I want to share that next phase of it.
Right.
So I think that my background, especially seeing my grandmothers go through things. So my dad's mother had a farmer's market not too far from here. They were married for almost 70 years.
Wow.
They would eat first. They started out growing their own fresh fruit and vegetables, and they would get it from like the farms further south in Salem and Cumberland County.
Right.
They had that in Haddonfield, New Jersey for all their lives. And my mom's mother had 12 children.
Wow.
So very different in kind of like the way that they did. So I got to see a grandmother who was very entrepreneurial.
Yes.
And one that was very nurturing. And the two of those mindsets together showed me a different role for how people are to be intersectional. Then when you bring the diversity of religion or race into it, is a whole nother aspect to it.
Yes.
Because I can remember watching TV and my grandmother would say, people don't look like us on the television. And it wasn't until, I'm dating myself, Lisa Thomas Laurie showed up on Channel 6 News.
Yes.
That my grandmother said, oh my goodness, look, somebody that finally looks like us is actually on the news.
Wow.
So there are little things like that,
Yep.
that there were a lot of firsts.
Wow.
Oh, the first person that did this. Oh, the first person that did that. And I think that that's what also kept it real for me.
Yeah.
Because I got to see my own family kind of move through those channels.
Wow.
And how that thought process was.
Oh my God, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That is so deep. Yeah. Representation matters.
1,000%. So in a lot of my classes, my first activity is I ask people the term of, what did you want to be when you grew up? Because that's the first time we labeled children, is we ask them that question. So it sounds innocent enough,
right?
But it puts you in a box. Because if you say, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer, people go, oh my God, congratulations, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Nobody ever says that they want to pick up trash or they want to do any of these other random things, because they get that, oh, really, that's what you want to do?
Right.
So that's the first time we label someone, is when we do that to kids. Now, as adults, we do that when we go and network and we shake somebody's hand and say, what do you do? And then you give them the I.
Yes.
Or where are you from? And you give them the, that zip code.
Yeah.
So that bias creeps into those things. Well, I like to be able to share things with people so they know that they could say any of those types of things, and you go, wow, that's really awesome. Tell me more about that.
Wow.
We've done that to kids from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And that's kind of not fair.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to share those kind of stories with people.
I love that. Wow, what a great point. Can you share examples of how addressing intersectionality can lead to more inclusive environments?
So one of the things that we've been focused on is the mental health piece to all this. And so when I think about mental health, I think about if we don't use intersectionality, we don't use the things that we really need to know about each other, what happens? We've seen a rise in a number of things in mental health, depression, anxiety, toxic stress. But what also starts to happen on the back end are malicious hate crimes and behaviors that are just so maladaptive that you start to realize that these are the results of not being seen and heard.
Yes.
So if we don't get it together and we don't respect people for who they are and where they come from, I've seen more statistics of things like that that are more upsetting to me. And I would like to believe that if we can get kind of everyone to be on the same page with how they respect people, we can start to see reductions in some of these crime statistics.
Yes.
Reductions in addiction and some of the other things that we're seeing in the streets, and maybe give us an opportunity to heal and be successful in these things. We can't necessarily stop trauma from happening, but we can help people heal through it a little bit better by being resilient and teaching them some of those better coping skills.
Yes.
I think that for me has been just such a big avenue. Some of the stats are just terrible on how people treat each other.
I know.
So I'd rather be able to look at it in a way that gives people an opportunity to be calm.
Yeah.
I always tell people that you can take a breath and pause. You don't always have to react to everything.
Right.
Social media has its pitfalls because people feel like they have to react or they have to say something, and you really don't.
You don't.
But give them an opportunity to be able to just sit back and reflect, and I think that says more about your character than it does theirs. So if we can just get people to think about everything that makes them unique and be comfortable with that.
I love that.
I think you find your people.
Yes, you will.
And it's not always those that you're related to.
That is so true. Oftentimes it's the opposite.
Correct. It is, which is, for me as well.
Yeah.
We tell that to a lot of young people that are going through some things that the parents and grandparents might not be on the same page.
Yeah.
But it's okay. You'll find your people.
Yeah.
And it'll take you through.
Yes, and what I like that you said too is respect is key. Respect is key, and the other word that stood out to me was resilience, right? Because we are all much more resilient than what we think. Resilience is not extraordinary. Resilience is actually ordinary. So we all can kind of think back on something we've been through and think just how resilient we've been.
Absolutely. It's interesting too, because when you think about even in times like today in 2024, when things are not going 100% the way we thought they would.
Right.
You know what? This is where heroines are born.
Yeah.
People are born out of circumstances that they can stand up.
Yes.
And those are the things that write history books. And that's what I love to hear, those kind of stories of how people said, you know what, that's not for me, and this is the purpose that we're going to go for.
Yes.
So.
Oh, I love this. So what role do you believe leaders play in fostering a truly inclusive culture? What advice would you give to leaders who want to improve their DEIB initiatives in their organizations?
I like to think that leaders need to walk the walk and to live a life that deserves to have people follow them.
Yes.
I don't really think that from a moral compass perspective, you can be lousy as a human and strong as a leader, even if your company has a good profit margin. I think that you need to have, and I teach ethics and social responsibility at Wilmington U, so we have this conversation a lot. I think as a leader, you need to take responsibility for all aspects of your organization. You should treat it like it's your family.
Yes. And
how would you want them to be treated? What do your products represent? What does your marketing represent? How are you represented? And then what are you giving back?
Yes.
Because if you have any semblance of success, there should be something that you're carving out, whether it's sweat equity or financial, that you're making the world a better place than you found it. And I think that leaders I don't want to lead or work for someone that doesn't have that about themselves, because I want to feel good about the work that I'm doing.
Yes.
But I also want to know that it's not taken for granted or misused at any level.
Right.
And I think that's important.
Yeah.
We see companies all the time that have a product that goes off the shelves and you think, oh my Lord, what did they do?
Right.
And the leadership doesn't really handle it as elegantly as they should. Mm-hmm. And that's to me what I don't want to be a part of.
Yeah.
So, and we deserve to have leadership that we respect and we trust. And that's what I want to know. Somebody's behind me of something, if I need that support.
Oh, I love that. I love that. How can leaders balance promoting DEIB while respecting different opinions and backgrounds within their teams?
I think what they have to do first off is to look at their purpose within their organization, their strategic plan, and has to be woven in every part of it. I don't care if it's a leader, I don't care if it's someone that works in facilities, everybody owns a part of DEI.
Yes.
So your physical building has a role to play in that. So if you need to have a lactation room, if you need to have a family-friendly restroom, if you need to have a prayer room, someplace to reflect, everybody has a role in this. It's not just for one person at the top.
Yeah.
It's for everybody to have a piece of that and they had to have a stake in the game for that.
Yeah.
So I have the luxury of working with organizations throughout the state of New Jersey to write cultural competency plans. We follow something called class standards.
Okay.
It's culturally and linguistically appropriate service standards. There's 15 of them, and it talks from leadership down to the program level to the individual level.
Wow.
Think about each of your areas and where that's written in. Companies that get kind of tied up in some missteps are because somewhere along the line they don't have somebody with diversity of thought and presence. Like recently we talked about an organization that put out a candle, and the candle, instead of it looking like a snowflake, it actually looks like the Ku Klux Klan medallions on the front of it.
Wow.
So it got pulled off the shelves.
Okay.
But when you look at leadership, the leadership level looks diverse, but who's underneath of that? Where did it miss that hit the shelves, that it looked like that? It's such a stark contrast, like you couldn't mistake it.
Yeah.
So you wonder, where was the misstep in that? So you have to have it in every single level.
Okay.
And know your audience of people. If you need to have things in multiple dialects, if you have to have things written in different languages, there's a lot that goes along with that. And like I said, that anywhere from bereavement leave to some of the other nuances for maternity, paternity, we need to get on the same page with that, because it's the only way we're going to be successful to have a change in the disparities of healthcare.
Yes.
If we don't start that from the top as well.
Wow.
And value people for those things.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. June. In what ways do you see DEIB evolving over the next few years, and what new challenges or opportunities do you anticipate?
I think that people still think DEI has a negative connotation. I think that no matter what you call it, it's never going away.
Right.
Cultural anthropology is part of the fabric of our universe. And we need to understand what that really means, and to be able to understand how all these things come into place. It used to be when someone came into this country, they came in and they assimilated.
Right.
So everybody looked the same. Years ago when I first started working, we had to wear a skirt suit, pantyhose, and closed-toe shoes.
Wow. And
we had to assimilate to be like that. Gentlemen had to wear a suit jacket and pants with the same material, a white shirt and a tie. Everything was the same.
Yes.
Now people are saying, you know what, that doesn't really work for me.
Right.
I want to be able to be authentic. I want to show my culture. I want to show my heritage. I want to be able to reflect the things that I believe in and come to work in that fashion.
Right.
I think that that's part of what's going to continue to happen, that we're going to see people be able to embrace themselves and feel whole in all parts of their lives, and be able to not assimilate and not have to have laws to say, like the Crown Act, which it still doesn't have federal recognition. New Jersey's one of the third state to actually have the Crown Act, that you can wear natural hair in the workplace or in the school system.
Yes. Oh.
I shouldn't have to worry about a young, student that might have dreads and have to go through some kind of scrutiny for it. Like, that seems just astronomically crazy to me.
Yes.
So I think that what's going to change is we're going to change some of the names and terminology, but it still will have a purposeful name to it. I don't care what you call it.
Right.
It's still the inflection of human nature and cultural aspects that are going to make us great.
Yeah.
And we need to keep embracing that.
Yes, we do.
And I hope that we'll continue to participate in each other's cultures.
Yes.
And learn that we have more things similar than we do different.
We surely do.
Art, music, food, all great equalizers.
Yes.
But education is at the basis of it all.
Yes. Oh, I love that. How can technology and data analytics support the goals of DEIB, and what are some potential pitfalls?
I think analytics are great. I think that I don't want to see them limited to just charts and facts and figures. I think when it comes down to where you've got disparities today,
right,
I think you can look at some of the trajectories to see that we're improving in some of the health disparities that we see, or some of the other negative connotations for things. I think the pitfalls are technology. We're getting our information from the wrong places. So things like in social media, there are dozens of social media platforms, and we have to be careful that our kids are on platforms that you don't even know what the icons are.
Right.
And they're grooming kids in ways that are, really malicious intent for behaviors.
Yeah.
TikTok has a very different algorithm for us in the United States than it does in other parts of the globe.
Wow.
And it's deliberate. We live in the best country on the planet.
Yeah.
We have more privilege and more rights than any other country. And so to have a platform that tries to undercut that is really not the best. So where our kids are shown videos to eat Tide Pods, other countries are using that same challenge to look at how they can be financially secure and learn how to start businesses. So we have to really think about where we're getting our sources from and limiting some of those types of things. We have so much ahead of us to be able to take advantage of. And I think that this is where DEI work comes into play.
Yeah.
Because we watch things being said about certain demographics, and that perpetuates stereotypes and misgivings.
Yeah.
I don't want to see people in a fear-based society look at someone that looks different from them and cross the street, clutch their purse, or just have a thought process that's not whole.
Yeah.
So I think that those are some of the things that we can do to improve on that.
Right.
I love organizations that host events around not just Awareness Month, but additional things that they can learn. I did a session for an organization in North Jersey, and they brought in food trucks with food from all different countries.
Oh, wow.
So people can try that. Sometimes people just didn't have opportunity to try those types of things.
Exactly.
So now you give them an opportunity, and they go, oh, I really like that. That's the same as this that I have in my culture.
Yes.
And all of a sudden everybody's on the same page.
Yep. And there's just different names for the same kind of meals and the same kind of foods.
Exactly. And giving people an opportunity to participate.
Yeah.
I always invite people to come to any of the things that we're doing.
I love that.
And it doesn't cost you anything. Right now we have over 90,000 National Historic Sites throughout the United States.
Wow.
So get in the car and drive to one, look them up online. You can learn so much about our culture.
Yeah.
And there's so many beautiful things to learn about that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. What have you learned from any setbacks or challenges in your DEIB work, and how have those experiences shaped your approach?
I worked in an institution of higher education where I wrote a 60-page diversity program for students and for faculty. And it wasn't well respected by senior leadership at that particular time. And I was, I have to admit, I was a little bit in my feelings because I had put so much heart and soul in the research to do this. But I realized that some people have limitations within themselves.
Yes.
And I don't have control over whatever they've gone through, or whatever their traumas have been. And so some days I have to take a step back and say, that's not for me.
Yes.
And I can do this work, but I might need to do it somewhere else.
Yes.
And so those are the things, because I know that I set a good foundation.
Yeah.
So some people benefited greatly from it, and they still are, and other people are not. I can't change everybody. I wish I had that magic wand and I could just go around and give everybody just that encouragement to do better.
Right.
But some people have to learn it the hard way.
They do.
And their hearts may not be in the right place, but they also may not have the right intent and motivation behind it. So there aren't really any shortcuts. You just don't wake up one day with a pot of gold.
Right.
You kind of have to work for those types of things. So some other people are it takes a little bit longer for them to learn.
Yes.
It really does. And, you wish them well.
Yeah.
But I've learned that I can influence things in a way that make me feel, that I've had that value and that proposition for everyone. But it has not been easy.
Yeah.
And there are certain days where I could walk into a meeting and cover a topic and feel like I don't want to cry in front of people in these situations, but I know how tough things are.
Yeah.
There are days where I just would like to hug everybody and make you lasagna and have you come sit down.
Right.
Like, I don't even know how you get to that point, but there are some days where it's heavy.
Yeah.
It really is. So you really hope that you have to find ways that you can bring that together.
Yeah. And change isn't easy. For every single one of us humans, change is difficult. And when we think of Prochaska and De Clemente stages of change theory, for any of us to even get to the action stage of change, there are 3 stages that we have to pass through before we get to the action stage of change. So the first stage is pre-contemplation. In a pre-contemplation stage, nobody thinks they have a problem. I'm good, take it or leave it, take me as I am. And then in a contemplation stage, the person starts to think, because they're getting feedback from other people, hey, this isn't right. So now they start to think, well, maybe I can work on that. But we're still not at the action stage of change, because now they have to move to the preparation stage.
Correct.
Which is preparing to change your behavior. And that could take up to 30 days or more. And then they move to the action stage of change, where now you actually can pinpoint actual change behavior. And even then, relapse or reoccurrence is normal. So as humans, we're likely to slip back into our old patterns and have to get back on track. But once we're doing that change of action for 6 months, now we hit that maintenance stage of change.
Sure.
Now we're trying to maintain all of those tiny steps and small habits that we have been working towards over 6 months.
Sure.
But when we fall back, we can't beat ourselves up. It's common human nature, and we just have to get back on track.
But it's interesting, because if you went to a doctor and they said you have heart disease, and the doctor says, this is what you need to do to make things better.
Yeah.
Oh, don't smoke, don't drink, exercise. 6 months go by and you go back in and there's no improvement in your health, and you go, did you stop smoking, drinking, and did you exercise? And people go, no. The result's not going to change if you don't do the work.
Exactly.
And that's part of the problem. Sometimes people don't know where to start to do the work. I tell people when they're starting their cultural competency plans that I guarantee you they're doing something today that they didn't even realize was a part of this.
Right.
And I do think, like, this time of year, holiday time of the year, people are really in a different kind of giving mode. And so I'm like, start there. What are you doing at this moment to help somebody else? And then you can start to build your process out from there.
Yes.
And look at things in organizations. You might look at it by department. You might look at it by program.
Yes.
Supervisors need to get into the same swing of thing with their employees all the way through. And you might just need some additional processes in place. Sometimes people need mediation to be able to bring it together and learn things about themselves and their organizations if it's not going in the right direction.
Yeah. Great. I love it. So, how do you stay inspired and resilient in your work, especially given its challenges and complexities?
So, I love the volunteer work that I do.
Yeah.
I am the board chair for the Alice Paul Institute. I love that Alice was the woman that got the women's right to vote in 1920. Not all women, but we know that she had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And that we've been able to tell the true story of suffrage, from the Divine Nine that were walking hand in hand to Chalice, from the Native American women up in New York that really were the originators of the suffrage movement. I love working with the military. I love to hear how their stories of resilience and sacrifice and the families, tremendous. I love any of the Native culture, and I also love to think that all these things together are what really give me an inspiration. I've been so pleasantly surprised by people that I hear from years ago. They'll say, hey, I'm doing this because I remember you spoke about this. That always warms my heart when I'm asked to, continue to do some of those types of things. I love to see the Girls Leadership Council be given an opportunity for them to say, you know what, I see a need in this, let's start. They started a period pantry for period insecurities.
Yes.
Who would know that this stuff is a thing? And now all of a sudden we start to take a look at this and we go, oh my goodness, that also was something that was a need in domestic violence households and in transgender like all these things had legs to it that who would have thought that the good has started here, and it's just fanned out like that.
Wow.
So I have 1,000 books. Amazon comes to my house every week. My husband's like, please stop with the books. But I find that I just love learning about other people's journeys and things that they're doing and hearing it, and I'm just inspired by that.
Wow. And
I try not to, life is totally not easy. Yeah. I'm that sandwich generation, I have a daughter who's doing beautifully well, a mom who's almost 90 that we have some health challenges with, but we can still learn from all these different facets of it.
Yes.
We find some good things into it, for sure.
I love it.
Yeah.
So what are some practical steps individuals can take to promote DEIB in their daily lives, whether in their personal or professional spheres?
I think people need to volunteer.
Yes.
I think they need to leave their houses.
Yes.
I think they need to understand that there's a need for, no matter what their skill sets are, that a nonprofit can benefit from that.
Yeah.
You can be on a board, you can be on a committee. I first started, believe it or not, I was married for 5 minutes many years ago, and I came into work and a coworker said, "You look terrible. You need to go volunteer because you need to know that people have worse things going on than what you think are going on right now." And I volunteered. I was a board member for Artreach, which helps the disabled community see arts programs. I did that for 15 years.
Wow.
Once you start to get involved in other things and put some of your own little woes behind, and it's not to say that you don't have issues, but you really start to think that your talents that you've been given could really benefit other people. And I met the most wonderful people on this journey.
Wow.
So I definitely think volunteering is something that everybody can do.
Yeah.
Education, it doesn't mean you need a formal education and another degree. We all have access to so much information on our phones, on our computers. Look up things on Smithsonian. Take virtual tours of any of the historic sites that are out there.
Yeah.
Enjoy those types of things. There's something for everybody.
Yes.
There's art exhibits at colleges, at schools. There's so many things that you can be involved in, and I think that's a really big thing. I also think that and I'm not the best nature girl, but if you can get outside and take advantage of some of the things that are out in our communities, I think that's such a healthy way to be able to start thinking about diversity, because each community has so many rich things that you should be able to try. I love food.
Right.
So if I can go to a different neighborhood or a carnival or some kind of event and try something new, I'm in 100%.
Yes. Something that you said I was married for a quick 5 minutes and now you're remarried.
I am.
And you are such a powerhouse. Dr. June is literally everywhere. You're literally supporting this organization, that organization. And I see your husband accompanying you to some of these events, and he's just as supportive. What is that like for you, having that supportive husband who stands by you, helps encourage you in your dreams and goals, and doesn't seem to hold you back from being you?
Somebody told me a long time ago, a strong woman either has no husband or a strong husband.
Yes.
And I have a strong husband. And actually, I can tell you that my husband gets up every day and he goes, "June, I do not have my butt kicking pants on today. Do not pick a fight. Wait until I'm ready, and then we can handle it." So there are days when I come home and tell him what I've been through, and he goes, "I think I need to have a conversation with that person." I'm like, "Okay, babe, we're good. It's okay." But what's lovely is that there are things in his life that he's learned to do different. It's made him a better leader in his job, that we've talked about these different conversations. He's seen things with his own family, areas of opportunities. We spend a lot of our weekends traveling to those historic sites. We've been to castles and we've been to museums. And I've learned a lot from him as well. He's just extremely bright in so many different things. But I love the fact that I'm respected and that I'm encouraged.
Yes.
And have done the same for him, because we're only on this planet for a hot second.
Hello.
And so, years ago, when you think you've got this checklist of what you want in a mate,
right,
sometimes that's not the best thing for you. It really isn't.
I agree.
And I can tell you that during this process of, prior to us meeting, you start to date people, and I asked for one thing. I read this book about Christian dating. I know this is so cliche, But it said, ask to see the real person sooner than later. When I got to that point, people's flaws came up like that. And I was like, ooh.
Mm-hmm. Red flag, green flag, yellow flag.
I'm like, wow, flags were flying. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Thank you for showing me your real self and gotta go. And I was able to really separate myself from anything that wasn't for me.
I love it.
I know that sounds very cliche, but it totally is a thing.
Yes, it really is.
And we work on everything.
Yes.
The other thing is, it's not 50-50 at all. Like somebody asked me when I got my doctorate, they said, oh, your husband must be really happy. And I'm like, yeah, as long as there's chicken cutlets when he gets home. He's like, good for you. What's for dinner? And it is comical, but we enjoy ourselves in that manner.
I love it because your relationship is reciprocal.
100%.
You do for each other. You guys sound like you are a united team. You're on the same team.
We are.
Right? This isn't a competition. You're not going against each other. You guys work hand in hand.
And respect each other.
I love it.
Because he knows he's job one for me, vice versa. And the respect of even if he's not with me, he's with me.
Yes.
So I don't have to worry about anybody that knows me for 5 minutes knows that, I got my daughter, my husband, my furry kids, and I'm complete. So
yes. Well, let's reiterate this important nugget, golden nugget of information that Dr. June shared with us. So tell us again, let me see if I'm saying this right. So a strong woman either has no husband or she has a strong husband.
Correct.
I love that. That's key. Ladies, we have to really take that in, and gentlemen too, because for the gentlemen that want that strong woman, you don't know what you're getting into until you get it. So just remember, you have to present yourself as strength. If you're saying you want someone who's strong and powerful, let's first ask ourselves, but am I strong and powerful first?
And it's the respect factor.
Yeah.
And that's where you can't be afraid of that.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of women, and I hear this from a lot of young men, they don't know what their role is when they have a strong woman. And we have to put all that stuff aside.
Right.
It's not, the 1400s. We can bring a lot to the table in so many different ways. And you can be interesting. I think that traveling and reading and makes a person so much interesting. Who wants to sit at dinner with someone that has nothing to say?
Exactly.
So you want to be able to bring something into it that isn't just a complaint. It's got to be a little bit more interesting for that to be the case, and build those memories together.
Yeah.
My family's so sick of me taking pictures, but I'm like, we're making a memory. Let's go.
Yes.
This is what we're doing. And do it intentionally every day. I literally think that when you plan out your weeks, plan out the same amount of time to do that with your significant others and your family members and your friends that you cherish. I make girlfriend time, and it could be an hour. It doesn't have to be forever, but if I can pop out, go shopping, have lunch, that's all great stuff. It helps me be a better me.
Yes. Oh, I love this. So deep and meaningful conversations and making memories is key.
Sure.
So Dr. June, as we wrap up our talk, I have one last question for you. What advice would you give to someone interested in pursuing a career in DEIB leadership?
Know yourself. Know where you came from. Understand that. Understand where that falls in history. Understand how laws and how situations have gotten us to where we are today, and what can you do to bring value to make it a better place than where you found it.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that, Dr. June. And on that note, we have heard from the queen of diversity, equity, inclusion, leadership. Dr. June has shared and dropped so many nuggets. She even gave us some great relationship advice. I love it. And we just thank you. I thank you so much, Dr. June, for joining us.
It's my pleasure. It really is. It's so lovely to be able to be so authentic and intentional in these conversations. I just love that.
Yes, and I love your authenticity because it really helps people connect with their authenticity and to walk in their own power and who they are and not be afraid to share. We all have gifts to share.
We do.
And we can't get your unique gift if you're not being uniquely who you are.
100%.
So let's all do a little bit better and let's grow each day with walking authentically in who we are.
100%.
And listen, if you all need help with that, in my private practice, I help people. I specialize in helping people to live their very best lives now, authentically being who they are despite life's challenges.
That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. So with that, I thank you so much for joining Talk the Wellness Tea with Dr. Chalice and Dr. June Cernak.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.